The sun was just beginning to peek through the heavy velvet curtains of Arthur's suburban home. It was 6 in the morning, the same time it had been for the last 40 years. Arthur, who was 68, moved with a slow, practiced rhythm. He didn't need to think about what he was doing. His body just knew. First, the click of the kettle, then the rhythmic thud of the morning paper hitting the porch. It was a comfortable life, a good life. But in the shadows of that comfort, something was moving, something silent and invisible. Arthur sat down at the small oak table, the same table where he'd raised 3 kids and shared 1,000 laughs with his wife Martha. And there it was, his favorite part of the day, his breakfast. 2 slices of thick white bread, toasted to a golden brown, slathered in that creamy synthetic margarine he'd bought for years because the label said heart healthy. Beside it, 3 links of glistening breakfast sausage and a large glass of orange juice from a carton. To Arthur, this was the breakfast of champions. It was the fuel that kept him going. He felt fine, or at least he thought he did. But as he took that first bite, he didn't realize that every swallow was like adding a tiny, microscopic layer of sludge to a pipe that was already starting to narrow. You see, Arthur represents so many of us. We fall into these patterns, these little comfort zones, thinking that because we've done something forever, it must be okay. We trust the bright, colorful packaging at the grocery store. We trust the catchy slogans, but we rarely stop to look at what's actually inside. Later that afternoon, Arthur was out in the garden, tugging at a stubborn weed near the hydrangeas. Suddenly, his chest felt heavy. Not a sharp pain exactly, but like a heavy book was being pressed against his ribs. He stood up, wiping sweat from his brow, and his vision, just for a second, went blurry. Just the heat, he muttered to himself. Just need to sit down for a minute. But deep down, in that quiet place we all have, a tiny alarm bell started to ring. That evening, Martha noticed him picking at his dinner. "You all right, Artie?" she asked, her eyes narrowing with that wife intuition that nothing can escape. "I'm fine, Martha, just a bit tired." But he wasn't fine. That night, as he lay in bed, the silence of the house felt heavy. He could hear his own heart thump, thump, thump. It sounded labored. It sounded tired. The next morning, instead of reaching for the toaster, Arthur did something he hadn't done in a long time. He reached for his laptop. He started searching, looking for answers, wondering if that fine feeling was actually a mask. He stumbled upon a video, much like the one you might be thinking of now. It talked about the silent cloggers. It talked about how after 60, our bodies don't process those processed fats and sugars the same way they used to. It talked about the breakfast trap. Arthur looked at his margarine. He looked at the ingredients list for the first time. Words he couldn't even pronounce. Monoglycerides, sodium nitrite, high fructose corn syrup. He felt a chill go down his spine. He wasn't just eating breakfast. He was building a wall inside his own veins. Now this is where the story shifts, because realization is only the first step. The second step is action. Arthur looked at Martha across the kitchen. "We're cleaning out the pantry," he said, his voice firm for the first time in weeks. "Artie, what are you talking about? That's perfectly good food." "No," he said, holding up a package of those sausages. "This isn't food. It's a slow-motion disaster." Together, they spent the afternoon reading labels. It was shocking how much sugar was hidden in things they thought were healthy. The yogurt, the granola, even the whole wheat bread was packed with stuff that had no business being there. They felt betrayed, but they also felt awake. The following Monday, Arthur went for a checkup. The doctor, a young man with a kind face, looked at the blood work. "Arthur," he said, "I'll be honest. You caught this just in the nick of time. Your cholesterol is through the roof, and your inflammatory markers, well, let's just say your body has been screaming for help." Arthur nodded. He didn't feel scared anymore. He felt ready. He started small. Instead of the white toast, he switched to steel-cut oats with fresh blueberries. Instead of the margarine, a small slice of avocado. Instead of the juice, just plain cold water with a squeeze of lemon. The first few days were hard. His body craved the sugar. It craved the salt. He felt irritable. He felt tired. Is this worth it? He wondered, staring at a bowl of oats that looked nothing like his old greasy favorites. But then, on the 7th day, something happened. He woke up before the kettle clicked. He didn't feel that morning fog that had followed him for years. He felt light. When he went out to the garden, he pulled 3 weeds, then 4, then 10. He didn't need to sit down. The heavy book on his chest was gone. Weeks turned into months. Arthur's skin started to look clearer, his eyes brighter. When his grandkids came over, he didn't just sit in the lawn chair and watch them play. He got up. He chased them. He felt like a man 20 years younger. One afternoon, he was walking walking through the grocery store. He passed the aisle with his old breakfast favorites. He saw a man, about his age, reaching for the same white bread and the same synthetic margarine. Arthur stopped. He wanted to say something. He wanted to warn him, but he knew everyone has their own journey. He just smiled and kept walking, his cart filled with greens, nuts, and fresh fish. He realized then that aging isn't a downward slide. It's a choice. You can choose to let the rust build up, or you can choose to polish the engine. Arthur chose the polish. So if you're listening to this and you're over 60 or 50 or even 40, ask yourself, what's on your plate tomorrow morning? Is it fuel or is it a clog? It's never too late to change the ending of your story. Arthur did it, and he's still out there in that garden, breathing deep, living loud, and enjoying every single bite. Remember, your health isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you build, one breakfast at a time. Don't wait for the heavy book on your chest, the hidden saboteur in the breakfast nook. Now, let's take a closer look at that transition, because as Arthur found out, it wasn't just about throwing away the old food. It was about relearning how to live. Imagine for a second that your body is a high-performance engine, a classic car, maybe a '65 Mustang. You wouldn't put cheap, watered-down gasoline in a Mustang, would you? Of course not. You'd treat it with respect. You'd polish the chrome. You'd change the oil. You'd listen to the hum of the motor. But for years, Arthur had been putting sludge into his engine and wondering why it was starting to sputter. The first week of his new life was, let's be honest, miserable. He sat at that same oak table, staring at a bowl of steel-cut oats. No sugar, no heavy cream, just a few walnuts and a handful of blueberries. It tastes like cardboard, he grumbled to Martha. Martha, bless her heart, she was already feeling better. She had more energy, her joints didn't ache as much in the morning. She looked at him and said, "Artie, your taste buds are just loud right now. They're screaming for the salts. They're screaming for the chemicals. You have to quiet them down." And he was right. You see, those processed foods, they're designed, engineered to be addictive. They hit the same parts of your brain as a drug. That heart-healthy margarine, it's filled with emulsifiers that trick your tongue into thinking it's eating something rich, while your arteries are actually suffocating. Arthur had to realize that the flavor he loved was actually a trap. By day 10, something shifted. He took a bite of a crisp red apple, and for the first time in decades, he actually tasted the sweetness, not the cloying, fake sweetness of a corn syrup soda, but the real earthy sugar of the fruit. He realized his body was starting to heal. Now, let's talk about the why. Why does this happen, especially to those of us over 60? As we age, our arteries lose their bounce. They become a little more rigid, a little less forgiving. When we eat those cloggers, the trans fats, the excessive sodium, the hidden sugars, our body can't just wash them away. They stick. They form a thin layer of plaque, like the scale that builds up in an old tea kettle. Over time, that layer gets thicker and thicker until the blood, the very life force of your body, has to squeeze through a tiny, narrow opening. That's why Arthur felt that heavy book on his chest. His heart was working double time just to get blood to his brain and his limbs. It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? But here's the beautiful part. The human body is incredibly resilient. Even at 68, even at 78, your body wants to heal. It's just waiting for you to give it the right tools. Arthur started walking, just to the end of the driveway at first, then to the corner, then around the entire block. He noticed things he hadn't noticed in years. The smell of the pine trees, the sound of the creek behind the Smith's house, the way the air felt cool and sharp in his lungs. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was participating in his own life. One afternoon, Arthur was at the local hardware store. He ran into his old friend, Bill. Bill was 65, but he looked tired. He was leaning heavily on his cart, his face a bit gray. "Hey, Artie." His voice was a bit raspy. "You look different. You lose weight?" Arthur smiled. "A little, Bill, but mostly I just stopped eating the junk." Bill laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "Oh, come on. We're at the age where we should enjoy ourselves. Life's too short for birdseed and water." Arthur looked at his friend, really looked at him. He saw the puffiness under Bill's eyes, the way he caught his breath just from standing there. "Bill," Arthur said quietly, "I thought that too. I thought I was enjoying myself with those big breakfasts and the sugary snacks, but I realized I wasn't enjoying my life. I was shortening it. I want to see my grandkids graduate, Bill. I want to take Martha to the coast next summer, and I can't do that if I'm stuck in a hospital bed because of a toaster pastry." Bill went quiet. He looked down at his enormous cart, which was filled with frozen pizzas and processed meats. The seed was planted. That's the thing about this journey. It's contagious. When people see you, truly see you, thriving, they start to wonder if they can do it too. Arthur didn't become a health nut overnight. He still had his struggles. There were days when he walked past a bakery and the smell of fresh glazed donuts nearly brought him to his knees. But then he'd remember that heavy book. He'd remember the blurry vision, and he'd keep walking. If you're listening to this, maybe you felt that heavy book too. Maybe you felt like your best days are behind you, that the slowing down is just part of the deal. I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be. You have the power right now in your kitchen to change your trajectory. Start by looking at the labels. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. If it comes in a box with a cartoon on it, put it back. Reach for the things that grow from the earth, not the things made in a factory. It sounds simple because it is simple, but simple isn't always easy. It takes courage. It takes discipline. But the reward is everything. Arthur is 72 now. He just finished his first 5K walk. He didn't win, but he finished. And as he crossed that line with Martha cheering from the sidelines, he didn't feel like a senior citizen. He felt alive. He looked at the sun. He felt the pulse in his wrist, steady, strong, clear. His arteries weren't clogged anymore. They were open to the future, open to the possibilities, open to every single breath. What are you waiting for? Now, let's talk about the real battlefield. It isn't the doctor's office, and it isn't even your kitchen. It's the grocery store, specifically the middle aisles. Arthur called it the gauntlet. About 3 months into his new lifestyle, Arthur found himself standing in aisle 4, the snack aisle. He was there to find some plain raw almonds, but his eyes, they kept drifting. They drifted to the brightly colored bags of potato chips, the ones with the sea salt and natural labels. He looked at the cookies, the low-fat ones that he used to think were a healthy compromise. He felt like a ghost haunting his own old life. He stood there for a long time. His hand actually reached out. His fingers brushed against a package of those chocolate-filled cremes. "Just one," a voice in his head whispered. "You've been so good, Artie. One little cookie won't kill you." But then he remembered something the doctor had said. "Arthur, every time you eat highly processed sugar, your body goes into a state of inflammation. It's like throwing a lit match into a dry forest. It doesn't just pass through you, it leaves a mark." Arthur pulled his hand back as if the package of those chocolate-filled cremes was hot to the touch. He realized that the marketing on those boxes, it was a lie. Natural flavor, heart-healthy grains, low cholesterol. It was all just noise. It was noise designed to keep him from looking at the truth. He turned his back on aisle 4 and he headed for the perimeter. You've probably heard this before. Shop the perimeter. But do you know why? Because the perimeter is where the life is. The perimeter is where you find the things that rot. And that sounds like a bad thing, doesn't it? But it's actually the best thing. If a food doesn't rot, if it can sit on a shelf for 2 years and still look the same, what do you think it's doing inside your body? It's sitting there. It's resisting your natural enzymes. It's clogging. Arthur walked into the produce section, and for the first time, he felt excitement. He saw the deep dark purple of the kale, the vibrant orange of the sweet potatoes, the rough, textured skin of a fresh ginger root. He realized these weren't just vegetables. They were medicine. He started to think of his grocery cart as a toolkit. The spinach, that was for his blood pressure. The wild-caught salmon, that was the grease for his joints in his brain. The garlic, that was the broom that helped sweep out the toxins. He felt powerful. For 40 years, he had been a passive consumer. He just bought what was on sale, what was easy, what tasted fine. Now, he was a health architect. He was building a masterpiece out of fiber and antioxidants and clean protein. But then came the Sunday dinner. His daughter, Sarah, came over with the grandkids. She brought a big, heavy lasagna, dripping with cheese, and a loaf of white garlic bread slathered in butter. "Dad, I made your favorite," she said, beaming. Arthur felt a knot in his stomach. He didn't want to be that guy. He didn't want to be the difficult one, the one who wouldn't eat his daughter's cooking. He looked at the lasagna. He could smell the salt. He could see the grease pooling on top. He took a small portion, a very small portion, and he filled the rest of his plate with the big salad Martha had made. "You're not eating much, Dad," Sarah said, her brow furrowing. "Are you feeling okay?" Arthur took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. "Sarah, honey, I love you, and I love your cooking, but my body, it doesn't handle this the way it used to. I want to be here, Sarah, for a long time. I want to see these kids grow up, and to do that, I have to be careful." The room went quiet. The grandkids looked up from their plates. Sarah looked at her father, really looked at him. She saw the way his skin glowed, the way he wasn't huffing and puffing after just walking up the stairs. She reached out and squeezed his hand. "I understand, Dad. I actually brought some fruit for dessert. I thought maybe we'd skip the cake today." That was the moment Arthur realized he wasn't just saving himself. He was changing the culture of his family. He was showing his daughter and his grandkids that love isn't expressed through heavy grease and sugary treats. Love is taking care of the body you were given. After dinner, Arthur didn't feel that food coma he used to get. He didn't need to sprawl out on the recliner for 2 hours. Instead, he went outside. He grabbed a football and he threw it with his grandson, Leo. "Grandpa, you threw that really far," Leo shouted, running after the ball. Arthur laughed. It was a deep belly laugh. He felt strong. He looked at his hands. The skin was less papery, the veins less prominent. He was reversing the clock. "Now, let's talk about you. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, it's too late for me. The damage is done." Listen to me very carefully. The damage is never done. Your body is a miracle of engineering. Every few months, your cells, they regenerate. You have a new liver every few years. You have a new lining of your gut every few days. If you stop the sludge today, your body starts cleaning today. It's like a river. If you stop dumping trash into the river, eventually the water runs clear. Don't look at the 60 years behind you. Look at the 30 years ahead of you. Do you want those 30 years to be spent in a waiting room, or do you want them to be spent on the porch, watching the sunset with a clear mind and a strong heart? The choice is in the cart. The choice is on the plate. Arthur made his choice, and every morning when he wakes up and his feet hit the floor and he feels zero pain, he knows he made the right one. So next time you're in that gauntlet, in those middle aisles, remember Arthur. Remember the heavy book and keep walking. Walk toward the green, walk toward the fresh, walk toward your life. Now let's talk about the hardest part. It's not the hunger and it's not the label reading. It's the people. Every Tuesday for 15 years, Arthur met the boys at the local diner. There was Bill, Lou, and Big Mike. They had a booth, the one in the back near the window, and every Tuesday the order was the same. 4 Grand Slam breakfasts. Extra bacon, extra butter, and a bottomless pot of coffee, loaded with that powdered, non-dairy creamer. This was Arthur's social soul. But the first Tuesday after his awakening, Arthur felt a knot in his stomach. He didn't want to lose his friends, but he didn't want to lose his life either. He walked into the diner. The smell of frying grease hit him like a physical wall. It used to smell like heaven. Now, it smelled like an oil fire. He sat down. Lou looked at him over his glasses. "You're late, Artie. We already told Brenda to start the bacon." Arthur took a deep breath. "Actually, Lou, tell Brenda to hold the bacon. I'm doing things a little differently today." The table went silent. You could hear the sizzle of the grill in the background. "Differently?" Big Mike chuckled, his belly shaking under his flannel shirt. "What, did you join a cult, Artie? You look different. You look smaller." "I feel better, Mike," said Arthur, his voice steady. "I went to the doctor. My heart, it wasn't happy. I'm eating for my heart now." Brenda came over, her notepad ready. "The usual sugar?" "No, Brenda," said Arthur, smiling gently. "Could I get 2 poached eggs, a side of sliced tomatoes, and just plain black coffee?" Brenda blinked. She'd known Arthur since his hair was brown. "No toast, Artie? No hash browns?" "No toast," he said. "Thank you." The ribbing started almost immediately. "Poached eggs?" Bill snorted. "That's hospital food, Artie. You're 68. You've earned the right to eat whatever you want. Why suffer now?" Arthur looked at Bill, then at Lou, then at Mike. He saw the way they moved, the way they groaned when they shifted in the booth. He saw the puffiness in their hands. "That's the thing, Bill," Arthur said, leaning forward. "I thought I was earning the right to be miserable. I thought the joint pain, the tiredness, the brain fog, I thought that was just part of the deal. But I've been off the sugar and the grease for a month, and the pain, it's gone." Lou narrowed his eyes. "Gone completely?" "Completely," Arthur said. "I'm sleeping through the night. I'm gardening for 3 hours at a time. I'm happy, Lou. For the first time in a decade, I don't feel like an old man." The breakfast arrived. The boys dug into their piles of pancakes and syrup, but something was different. The atmosphere had shifted. They weren't laughing as much. They were watching Arthur. They watched him eat his simple eggs and tomatoes. They watched the way he sat up straight, the way his eyes were clear, the way he didn't need 3 refills of coffee just to wake up. Arthur realized he was a mirror, and they didn't like what what they saw in themselves when they looked at him. They saw a man who had taken his power back, and that was intimidating. "It's just a phase," Big Mike muttered, wiping grease from his chin. "You'll be back to the bacon by next month. Just wait." Arthur didn't argue. He didn't preach. He just ate. But here's the kicker. The following Tuesday, Bill was missing. "Where's Bill?" Arthur asked. Lou looked down at his plate. He had ordered the usual, but he hadn't touched the hash browns. He's in the hospital, Artie. Minor stroke. He's gonna be okay, but it was a close one." Arthur stood on his back porch, watching the frost melt off the grass. It was exactly 1 year to the day since he had stared at that synthetic margarine and felt that heavy book on his chest. He looked at his hands. They didn't shake anymore. He felt his pulse, a steady, rhythmic thump-thump, like a clock that had been cleaned and oiled by a master craftsman. He wasn't the same man, not even close. That morning, Arthur didn't just make breakfast. He made a celebration. He sautéed some fresh spinach with a little garlic. He poached 2 farm-fresh eggs, the yolks a deep, rich orange, and he sliced up a perfectly ripe avocado. He sat at the oak table, but he didn't feel like a ghost anymore. He felt like the owner of the... Martha walked into the kitchen, wearing her jogging suit. She looked radiant. "Ready for the big day, Artie?" "Ready," he said with a wink. Today was the Founders Day 5K, but this year they weren't just walking it. When they arrived at the park, the air was crisp. Arthur saw the crowd, the young families, the high school runners, and then he saw them. Near the starting line, there was Lou, Big Mike, and Bill. Bill was leaning on a cane, yes, but he was there. He had lost 30 pounds. His face had color in it again. He wasn't the gray man in the hospital bed anymore. "Look at us," Big Mike laughed, patting his stomach, which was significantly smaller than it had been at the diner. "The cardiac kids, back in action." They laughed, but it was a different kind of laugh. It wasn't a cynical laugh. It was a laugh of defiance. They were defying the statistics. They were defying the inevitable decline. They were proving that the heart is a resilient, beautiful thing if you just stop poisoning it. The whistle blew. Arthur started to walk. His stride was long. His breath was deep. He felt the blood moving through his legs, not struggling, not squeezing through pipes filled with sludge, but flowing. He thought about the breakfast trap. He thought about all those years he had spent in a fog, thinking that tired was just a synonym for old. He realized then that the greatest crime we commit against ourselves is the belief that we don't have a choice. We think the clogging is an accident. We think the stroke is a stroke of bad luck. But for Arthur and for Bill and for Mike, they realized it was a matter of stewardship. As Arthur crossed the 3-mile mark, he felt a surge of emotion. He remembered the morning toast that almost cost him everything. He remembered the fear, the blurry vision, the heavy book, and he realized that the toast wasn't the enemy. The indifference was the enemy. The "I'll start tomorrow" was the enemy. He saw his grandkids at the finish line, holding up a sign that said, "Go, Grandpa, go." He didn't just walk across that line. He sprinted the last 10 yards. His heart pounded. His lungs burned. But it was a good burn. It was the burn of a machine that was being pushed and was holding up. That evening, the house was full of people. His daughter Sarah was there, and this time she didn't bring lasagna. She brought a massive tray of roasted Mediterranean vegetables and grilled lemon chicken. "I learned a new recipe, Dad. I thought maybe we'd try it together." Arthur looked around the room. He saw his family eating real food, talking, laughing, not slumped over in a sugar crash. He realized that his one small change had become a great big legacy. He wasn't just saving his own arteries. He was saving his family's future. He was breaking the cycle of processed convenience and replacing it with life. Now, as we come to the end of this hour, I want you to take a moment of silence. Listen to your heart. What is it telling you? Is it asking for help? Is it telling you that it's tired of the sludge? Is it begging you for one more 5K, one more morning in the garden, one more year with the people you love? The choice is not some grand gesture. It's not a radical overhaul. It's the very next thing you put in your mouth. Tomorrow morning, when you stand in your kitchen and the sun starts to peek through the curtains, remember Arthur. Look at that box of cereal. Look at that heart-healthy spread. Look at that processed meat and ask yourself, is this worth missing the finish line? Is this worth the heavy book? Then put it back. Reach for the apple. Reach for the oats. Reach for the life. Arthur is still out there. He's 73 now. He's planning a hiking trip to the Smokies. He's not slowing down. He's just getting started. And you can be right there with him. The engine engine is yours. The fuel is in your hands. Now, go out there and drive.